Hello, everybody. Happy Monday, as far as Mondays can go. My name is Sean Speakman. I don't think I need to say that anymore. I'm with Terry Brooks, which I probably don't need to say anymore either. But we're here to do something very fun today. And, we're very close to the release of a new book, a new Brooks book, which is always exciting. And, Terry and I, over the last 20 years, we've always worked hard at trying to give you guys early looks as much as possible. Some of you like that. Some of you wait and hold out for the book when it publishes, but Daughter of Darkness publishes October 4th, and I can't be more excited about it because it's fantastic. And I'm going to turn this over to Terry real quick. He wants to say a couple words, and then we're going to jump right into this. Hello, Terry. How are you?
I am not doing too badly for an old dude. I'm happy to say that my editor, Ann Grohl, who is getting tougher on me as I do age, decided she liked the new book, Daughter of Darkness, better than she liked Child of Light, which I thought was impossible as much as she went on about it in the beginning. So I'm kind of excited about it now too, thinking to myself, well, maybe it's good. It's really good. I'm never really sure about these things. I always figure everything I do is good, but maybe not. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking you're overrating yourself. So we'll see.
Right. I actually had a similar reaction to Anne. I got that book pretty early. I read it, and it has the same magic, the same prose. Just how you don't want to, when you don't want to separate from a book for any amount of time.
Yeah,
because you're so entranced in it. That's how Child of Light was for me, and that's how Daughter of Darkness was for me. And I think Daughter of Darkness, its story is, you just take it to that next level. And so that's why I'm really curious to see about book 3 that you're writing right now to see if you can up number 2,
Well, number 2 is a bit gut-wrenching, and I'm not entirely sure how it's going to be received, but I felt like we ought to keep everyone on their heels with this series, not let it slide off. And this is a 4-book series, and that's it. Once I'm done with the 4th book, I don't have any plans at all to continue with it. So I'll probably just wrap it up and either, and go on to something else right away. Probably starting later next year.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Let's see. As a segue here, I'm going to say something really quick. I seem to remember, and maybe you can elaborate on this, but I seem to remember a part of Child of Light happened, you wanting to really hit the ground running with that book was because you read A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik, and you wanted to try to write something that was that fast and powerful right out of the gate. Is that right? Am I remembering that right?
I did. I felt like that the latter genre books were much slower in their starts, and I've been writing these long epic fantasies, through 30 books or whatever. So I felt like with this series, I wanted it to move more quickly and faster, start faster. So the idea was get it right with the first sentence, and just catapult everything forward from there. So that's what I've been pointing towards. And so far, even with the new book that nobody's seen, that coming out next year, I think I've accomplished that. That first chapter is very powerful. And I like books like that. I like books that bring me into the action or the turmoil of the story as quickly as possible. And then after that, if it slows down a bit here and there, and there's more information to fill in, that's okay. But I don't want to have to read 100 pages before anything happens. And that's just a function of where we are as a reading public these days, because that doesn't happen hardly at all anymore in a fantasy story.
Yeah, it's very rare these days. And I actually appreciate getting right into the story now that I'm, I guess, older and I have kids and I don't have a whole lot of time on my hands anyway. It's always nice just to get. So, A Deadly Education, those of you who haven't read Naomi's Scholomance trilogy, that one's wrapping up next week. I think book 3 publishes on the 27th, and Terry and Naomi are doing a Zoom event tomorrow at the same time tomorrow. So if you want more of Terry, you might not want more of me, but I'm sure you want more of Terry, and you definitely get Naomi tomorrow. Definitely join us tomorrow. The information's on her website. It's on Terry's website, and we're going to have fun tomorrow.
I think I think it's going to be really interesting. I have great admiration for her as a writer, and that's the kind of thing that you want to celebrate. And I'm anxious to talk to her about why I think her work is so good, why it reminds me of my own writing and the structuring, at least. We don't write about the same things,
Right.
but we do share the same sensibilities in many cases. So I'm anxious to see about her input, her impetuses, her what she draws on for her storylines, and how she approaches her work, because that's the part that always interests me the most, and I think readers are interested in that too.
Right. Yep. Let's see. Oh, could you repeat Naomi's book title? The first book is A Deadly Education, and the second book is The Last Graduate, and then next week The Golden Enclaves publishes.
Yep.
And gosh, people are loving that trilogy. Just online, it is incredible, the magic that Naomi has managed to capture in a bottle with that trilogy. So I highly recommend it, just like Terry. Of course, I'm biased too, because I work for Naomi as well, but I wouldn't say that, you know.
I don't think you would.
Yeah. So anyway, so we'll get to a first question here because it's easy. I posted a picture of you today reading outside on your veranda or whatever yesterday.
Oh, right.
Everybody's loving that photo of you out there reading a book. A lot of people wanted to know what book that was. What are you reading right now?
I'm reading Mark Lawrence's second book in the Ancestor series. I like Mark Lawrence's work. I've read, I think 6 of the, maybe a little more of the 12 books or so he's got out, about half of them, and I want to read this series, and then I'll pick up the other one at some point after that. But I like him as a writer. I think he's very spontaneously interesting and exciting. His word usage and his descriptions of things are very good. He's a step above most fantasy writers in my book.
Yeah, he has a great turn of phrase that you can't teach it. I don't think that's something you can teach personally, but
I don't think there's anybody else out there that's writing exactly like this. Like Naomi Novik, it's the same thing. The really good writers have a style that when you pick it up, you can tell almost immediately who it is you're reading, because they're individual enough, and the way they speak is peculiar enough to them that it doesn't get confused with other writers.
Right. Yep. I'm going to ask a question just here real quick from Richard T. He says, how's your day going, Terry?
Well,
you have to be with me. That sucks.
We have guests coming in about 30 minutes or so. And so this day's been a bit on the stressful side because Judine's been busy baking, which is one of her favorite things to do, and one of my favorite things for her to do. Self-aggrandizement here and self-satisfaction, both. So we've been doing that, and we've been trying to get the house straightened around and that sort of thing. So that always takes a little bit out of your starch out of you. And I worked all morning up until about 10 o'clock. I wrote right through my stopping time and kept going because I'm at a point now where I'm starting the last third of the book, the new book. So, when I get that close, I get my fire going and my engine's on and ready to plow on through to the end.
That's good news for all of us.
Putting my life to good use, basically.
That's good news for all of us Brooks readers.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do today, the whole purpose we're here is to talk a little bit about Daughter of Darkness, which you guys can ask questions about. Child of Light. It's been out long enough now if you want. And we're going to, I think Terry wants to do a short reading from the new book, which comes out October 4th. And then we're going to reveal the full color map that's in the book. And we're going to talk a little bit about that process and what that was like. But I guess to start, do you want to read now, or should we reveal the map first?
No, I'll read first.
All right.
I'm doing what I usually do for this, which is to read something from the first chapter, just enough to get you interested in continuing on, but not enough to really tell you anything too crucial to the story. So this is only about 2 pages and it goes pretty quickly. And in this particular, this is in the first chapter. So as I say, right away, there's trouble. And in this case, because Harrow and Oris are partnered, they're both involved in what's going on. And there's 1 or 2 other characters you might recognize that are also involved. And I'm just going to read enough to show you sort of what's going on. And that's, I think, all you need to know. And I'm not going to give it any context or setting or anything. I'm just going to read it as it is. Okay. Okay. So here we go. And this is first person narrative by Oris. So you will be seeing everything that's happening from her perspective, and she will be the one who's doing all of the thinking and reacting. When I turn to find Harrow, I find his attention has been drawn away by something else. Not a dozen feet away stands an armored giant. This is in no way an exaggeration. The giant is well over 8 feet tall and broad across the shoulders and chest, with huge arms and tree trunk legs. It is encased in metal, but not metal of the armored plating sort. What covers it is more on the order of a second skin, a form-fitting, flexible covering that shimmers and reflects. I have never seen anything like this huge creature. If it has a face, I cannot tell. A helmet encases its entire head, hiding its features entirely. Black light flickers from behind an opaque faceplate, as if something liquid is contained within. Strangely, it carries no weapons. Its arms hang loose. Its hands are empty. There are no blades strapped to its body. But its size alone is intimidating enough. What does something this large need with weapons? Harrow and I exchange a look. The giant faces him, not bothering with me. Harrow is the one he thinks dangerous. Little does it know. If we have to fight, I will change its mind quickly enough. We wait for it to attack, but it just stands there. Where did it come from? I don't remember seeing it when we rushed from the cottage moments ago. Is it allied with the goblins? I think it must be. Yet it seems not to know what to do next. I watch its head move slightly as its gaze travels from Harrow to me, and now I can sense it looking at me more closely. As it does, something odd happens. Almost as if it's startled, it takes a step back. It isn't as if it is frightened so much as surprised. I read all this in one small movement, and yet there is a certainty in me that insists I am not mistaken. What do we do now? I ask Harrow quietly. He shakes his head. Then he takes a step away from me. As he does, the giant moves with him, a clear indication it will not allow any attempt to get past it. Well, at least we know one reason it is standing there. I take a step in the other direction, but this time the giant doesn't respond. My feeling that it has chosen to focus on Harrow rather than me is reinforced. I should be grateful, and I am, but I am oddly irritated to be seen as somehow less of a threat. A burst of activity from Ancro's house catches our attention. The door flies open, and Shar appears, rushing to the rescue once more. Her thick mane of leafy hair flying out behind her, she rushes towards us. I admire my little sister's pluck, but despair of her lack of caution. Once before, when I first came to Viridian Deep, she charged to my rescue in a foolish display of bravado and love. That time I was able to save her. This time I don't know if I will be able to do so. When she sees the giant, she skids to a stop at once, the cudgel she carries lowering as she realizes what confronts us. You get away, she shouts threateningly. The cudgel lifts once more, demonstrating her determination to take action. Get away right now. Where in the world, I wonder, are Rondon and Raimi? How are they managing to sleep through all this wildness? As I glance about, I wonder the same about all those sleeping in other darkened homes surrounding the square. No one has appeared. Are they not home? Are they all such sound sleepers? Or do they simply think it unwise to interfere? Shar, Harrow calls out in his calm, measured way, go back inside. Please, let us handle this. The giant seems content to let that happen. It has barely glanced at Shar since her emergence and doesn't bother to do so now as she slowly backs away towards her house. I glance again at the other houses for some indication of help on the way, but find nothing. It seems that Harrow and I are to manage this threat alone. If there even is a threat, thus far, the giant hasn't approached either one of us and just seems intent on not letting us get past it. I take a moment to consider why. The elevated tree lane continues to wind through the old growth towards the west end of the city and a scattering of houses that sit mostly to one side, one of which is Ancrow's, into which Shar has just disappeared. Suddenly, I realize what is happening. Shar, I scream and rush forward. End. You can guess about that one. Anyway, I thought that was a fairly good lead into the nature of the story. It's hard. These stories are kind of hard to describe in brief because they're complex in their plotting and in their shift in the characters from one to the other, and the focus changes quite often, even with Shar being a narrator at the center of everything. And somebody's always in trouble or always in danger. And that is the nature of this particular kind of story. I don't know how many more of these I could actually write before my brain burned out or something, but I'm going to do at least the other two on that.
Somebody
We'll
said, Chris Waldron says, wait, what? That's the end? October 4th, no. Chris, October 4th.
I can tell you where to find the ending.
All right, so we got an excerpt there, lovely excerpt as usual. You always have a good instinct for cliffhanging. There's no doubt about that. I'm going to ask you some questions now, and then we're going to go to the map reveal, and then then I'm going to free you so you can go eat all those baked goods that Judine is producing.
I don't think I'm permitted to eat anything till the guests arrive.
Okay.
That's my guess.
So here's some, I'm going to ask you a quick question just out of curiosity. You wrote in third person for a very, very, very long time.
Yeah.
And with Street Freaks, you changed it up. You tried something different. That you had to learn a little bit about how to manage that in a way that you were happy with. And then this is something new altogether too. Are you still enjoying writing in the first person?
I don't know that how much more of this I'll do. I will do at least 2 more books worth, obviously, since I've committed to it. And the reason I did it in the first place was when I wrote Street Freaks, I did it to get away from the style I've been writing for so long. I wanted something new for that book, and it was a one-off at the time. So I didn't see any reason not to go ahead and experiment with trying first person, third person, and present tense, past tense, and so forth, just to see what felt like the best approach. But when I began this series, I knew right away that it needed to be immediate because, in the eyes of the readers, everything needed to be happening right now and in your face. Because this was that the tension in these books needed to be foremost in the readers' minds. I wanted them on the edge of their seats the entire time, or darn near at least. So I wrote in the first person, in the present tense, so that what's happening is happening in the moment that I'm writing about it, rather than, and with no remove from the third person sense. So you sort of know right away, for example, that Oris, as the main character who's reading all this, is probably not going to be killed in this book. And I didn't want to give the impression that that was where I was going. Everybody else is up for grabs. But I wanted her to be the beginning, middle, and ending of the book. Her character was the focus of everything. And that continues to be true through the other books, even when the protagonist in the third book becomes somebody else.
Right.
Just because this is really her story, as seen from different angles in different ways, at different times in her life. And it was something I did with, to some extent, with Running with the Demon, with The Word in the Void, where we had gaps of years between places in our heroine's life, but which at the time, each time there was an evolution in her character and in the situation that she was struggling with the whole time. And I like that approach. So, I think it's what I'm always saying. if you're a writer, you need to switch things up periodically. You need to experiment. You need to step outside the comfort zone and do something you haven't done before, because that's what makes you a better writer. And that's what gives you the training you need to experiment in other ways. And I just feel like if you're not in this, if you're only in this to write books and you don't care, how they come across or anything, that's one thing. But if you're in it to write books that you want readers to really appreciate and feel like they got their money's worth, and that you want to feel like you've given everything to, then you need to make these alterations occasionally.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and I have to say that's been very effective in these 2 books. And I can't wait for book 3. And book 3 has a great title too. I will go to bat for you at Del Rey if they try to change it.
I don't think they're going to try to change it. I thought about that. I had some other titles, and each one I thought was a little too weak, and it wasn't specific enough to the story. But this one is specific enough and interesting enough, and in fact appropriate enough to the story that I think everybody is going to go for it.
Great. Brian Gressler.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Let's see here. Brian Gressler asks, when do you think the signed page will be shipping Daughter of Darkness? That's a good question, Brian. I'm literally trying to get the books right now to be delivered next week. Right now, Penguin Random House is dragging their toes a little bit when it comes, like I wrote them last week, wanting to get copies. So I might not get copies early enough to have Terry sign them before he leaves. Terry's doing a tour this year, the first one in quite a while, and I think it's a pretty solid tour. The details are already up on the website at terrybrooks.net, so feel free to take a look and see where Terry's going to be. But he's going to be on the road for a good solid 10 days or 11 days. So I will get them signed as quickly as I can. Once I get them signed, I can ship them out because Terry's grandson, Hunter, will be helping me do that. So, when the signing does happen, it'll happen fast. But right now, it could be next week to ship out on October 3rd, or it could be the following week after that once Terry gets back into town. So we will make this happen some way, I promise.
I don't have, just to jump in for a minute, I don't have all the signings ready yet either. I'm going to do some small towns and smaller bookstores in the Northwest, and probably in the last half of the month of October.
Oh, okay.
But some of these I just haven't been able to get around to doing it. I mean, the problem is there's too much else going on all the time, and it's hard to make yourself do all the things you need to do before you need to go to bed.
One of the fun things, Terry and I we were at Rose City Comic-Con last weekend, and got to meet a lot of people from Oregon, Washington, Idaho, California, some people that traveled even farther than that even. And I had a number of especially Oregonians say, we have this great bookstore, we have this great library, especially in Southern Oregon. So I did write down names in case if you want me to forward those names to you, the bookstore names.
I do.
Yeah, because I love, especially in Southern Oregon, there's some really cute bookstores down there that I really like.
Well, I like doing the smaller bookstores in the smaller towns. I mean, part of the problem with the touring is that they always aim for the big cities. Let's go to the big cities. Let's hit the really big bookstores. Let's get a lot of publicity. Let's give it, all right, fine. But at the same time, what about all the places that are smaller and that have the same enthusiasm, but nobody ever goes there? You have to think about it in those terms. And if people love your work, they appreciate you more for making the effort to get to those places. And so I've been doing that on and off, as you know, for the last 10 years. Going to smaller stores in the Pacific Northwest particularly, but also around the country. And I expect to try to keep up with that for as long as I'm mobile.
Right. Brian Gressler also asked one more question, since I have Brian on the mind here. He says, what is the little comic strip on the desk behind Terry's left shoulder? Boy, I don't know.
Oh, that's a Far Side.
Okay, it's a Far Side. Okay.
It's about a writer.
Okay.
Which makes sense. Well, I love it because it's all about a writer who's trying to work, and all of his creativity is created by his wife, who cares nothing about what he's doing or even about him much. And he transforms her from this baggy looking person into this beautiful princess with a beautiful voice who speaks to him with trilling terms, like that. And it goes that way all until she tells him to take out the garbage. He says, take out the garbage. He says, her eyes sparkled like a mountain stream in the morning sun. Come with me, my valiant stallion. And I thought, yeah, that's the creative process for you, all right.
Oh, there you guys go. There's a look into Terry's writing space right there. Let's see here. Some more questions. An anonymous attendee asks, do you find your second draft easier to write than your first, or is it more challenging?
Do I find it to be what?
Do you find your second draft easier to write than your first, or is it more challenging?
Well, I don't know. That varies from one book to the next in large quantities of consideration. I think each of them have their own demands. When you're starting at the beginning, you want to get it as right as you possibly can, and you have to think about all the aspects of what you're doing, from the big stuff, which is the subject matter, to the little stuff, which is, are you using the right adjectives and adverbs and so forth. When you go back through, it's the second time you're reading. So now you're looking to see, did you get it right the first time? And if you did, are there things there that you could do better, or you could do differently? Or are you leaving something out that's important that you didn't think about a second time around? So all those things factor in. I think it's probably a 50-50 break between what you do. I spend a lot of time on rewrites. So because I rewrite over and over again when I'm writing the first time. I don't write one draft and then move on. I write a chapter and then I go back. Usually I write sections of chapters and then I go back and rewrite them again. So it's it's a meticulous process. It can be zone deadening if you're not paying attention to what it is you're supposed to be doing. But I like to think that after I have one finished with that first thorough rewrite, I can turn it over to Judine and say, what do you think?
Right. Yeah. And Judine always shoots you straight too, which is always great.
She does. I can't trust her to be kind to me. She's always very direct, and and that's what you want. You don't want people to tell you how great you are. You want people to tell you, what can you do better and why doesn't it work? Those are the two things that matter. Somebody telling you you're no good isn't any good either. It needs to be a specific comment directed at a specific subject in a specific way. And that's hard to do, but she reads more books than I do by about 2/3. And this is her life. She's a book person very much as I am.
Yeah, right. Let's see. Eric Scott asks, how do you stay motivated to write when you're having writer's block or when life feels like it's getting in the way?
The life getting in the way part's difficult these days. I have a large family that preys on me like wolves. Oh, I mean, no, that's not true. They're around a lot and involved in my life. And I think, and you're always wanting to do things with friends and have people come over and have some kind of a social life aside from watching a TV show or something. So all that can be distracting. But I don't believe in writer's block. I think writer's block is a myth. I think people talk themselves into thinking they have writer's block. But the truth of the matter is that what I really believe is that writer's block is caused by you took a wrong turn, and you need to back up in your book and see what you can do better about what you've already written, because that's usually when you hit a stumbling block, or that you are you're writing too much of the same thing. You are skipping away things that you shouldn't do. Your language is bad. Lots of things it can be. But I don't believe in writer's block because I think you can solve all your problems by taking the day off. I've always said that. I think that's really important. Or, just go take a shower or anything that takes your mind off of what you're doing and lets it run free for a little bit away from the disciplines of writing a book.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times where I'm driving, like usually between Seattle and Portland, And so I'm just on I-5 and I'm on autopilot, and
Yeah.
whatever problems I'm having in my book, whether it's a character motivation or where the story should go next, invariably it happens while I'm just sitting there zoning out driving, and the back of my head figures it out while I'm driving. So I firmly believe in the shower too, actually. The shower is the same way.
I think you have to let, I think you have to let these things come. They will, you know, if you start to think, if you try to think of answers to things all at once, how hard is that? I can
Right.
never do that. If somebody says, well, create a book, I go stone cold silent, because you can't just do it. You have to
Right.
let it come to you. You have to give it space. Then once I get it, I'm all right with it. Then I can start to develop the particulars, and then it becomes easier. And the other thing is I always say, you can, you know, if you're writing something, what you do should tell you where you need to go. I mean, you may have choices, but it was going to give you the options, because the story should proceed in a logical way.
Right. Let's see, Leslie Jacobs, when you are into writing a book, do you stick to a schedule or do you go with the flow?
Both.
Both. Yeah.
I mean, I pay close attention to the schedule, because otherwise, you know, a story that starts out in the desert ends up in the ocean. You may have a problem finding a way to get from one place to the other and then continuing with the rest of what you were going to write.
Right.
So you need to have some consistency to your trajectory, whatever it might be. But by the same token, this is a creative process. And so you have to allow room for changes and for rethinkings and for new and better ideas along the way, because those will happen. And you can't just cast them aside and say, I don't think so. I didn't plan it that way, so I'm not going to do it. I don't think you should ever do that.
I think the best choice that I've made in recent years is I really enjoy, like, I enjoy writing a lot. Like it's definitely my calling. It's what I love to do. But I have found that even if I just write 50 words a day, like I don't have a word count necessarily that I try to hit. I mean, I want to try to put down some pages every day, but if it's just 50 words for that day, at least my mind is in the world and in the story I'm trying to tell. And as long as my mind is half in that world, all sorts of answers can arise. And the moment I start taking a couple of days off from writing is where I start getting flummoxed and I start losing the voice or the narrative or whatever aspect of the writing I'm working on. So I think writing every day is important, even if it's just 10 to 50 words. What do you think about that?
We are writers. Words are drug.
It is. Yeah, they are.
I mean, it's a self-fulfillment thing. You feel better when you're doing what you love the most. And so you have to indulge it, or you're going to be all cramped up and not feel so good about yourself, or frustrated. So I think you need to write on a regular basis. And that's the one thing about what writers are always talking about. If you want to be a successful writer, you have to write, and you do. And you have to do it on a regular basis so that you stay in tune with what you're doing and you feel satisfied with the progress you're making. I live off of that. So I agree with you, Sean. That's exactly what.
All right, let's see. Louis Maradi asks, will there be a new Hero Forge figurine made for Daughter of Darkness? That's a very good question. I'm going to write that down.
Will there be a new what? Heroine?
Yeah, Hero Forge. Remember last year when we created the Haro? We made a little tiny figurine.
Yeah.
We should probably, you know what? I'm going to reach out to them and ask them if they'd like to produce an Auris. Now we can produce Auris now that she's changed enough, I think.
You could.
They should be partnered, right? I mean, they're partnered. They should be two of them. So
they are. Well, the difference in age, the ages between the two books is about 3 years. So it's not a lot. But she is obviously doesn't look like she used to, number one.
Yeah.
And she has developed a more mature look than she had before. So all those things are true. Plus, she's now got her family and she's now got a place in her life. And she's you know, adapted to her new situation. So there's a lot of things that will be different.
There you go. Let's see. And let's see, we'll do one more question here because you do have guests arriving soon. Brian Kenyon asks, what books are you currently in your must-read pile? So you're reading Mark Lawrence right now. You'll probably read book 3 in that trilogy, I would imagine, right after you finish book 2. So what are you going to read after that?
I'm not sure. I have several books put back that I'm going to read. I think I might read that new Stephen King book, Fairy Tales, just because I'm curious to see where he's gone. I haven't read his books for a long time, and I think I used to read them all the time, but I don't so much anymore. So I'll probably read that. I think there's a new Aronovich book out there. I want to read that.
Yeah.
Crazy Ben. And there'll be some new books coming out. Well, I have to read Naomi's new book. I haven't got that one either.
Right.
So
yeah, you should talk to your publisher about that. You have an in there.
You'd think. Don't count on it. I talk to them about these things, and about half the time they ignore me.
I'm also gonna I need to go buy Fairy Tale, the new King book.
Yeah.
That's almost next on my list too, for very similar reasons to what you're saying. It's getting a lot of praise online right now, and when he can stick an ending, boy, hardly anybody can do it just as good. So I'm excited about that. And the other book I have in my shopping cart right now on Barnes and Noble is Mem by Bethany Morrow, who we met at Rose City Comic Con. And
right.
I knew nothing about that book beforehand. I heard her talk about it, and it sounds right up my alley.
We're always talking about getting involved with new writers. So there's a couple of those out there that I read on a regular basis, and especially the ones that I've read before that I found to be really good writers. And I kind of hang in there for their next book from time to time and see if there's something that's coming out. So I read those books too. And I think there's 2 or 3 floating off there in the distance that are regular fiction of one kind, of literary fiction and one kind or another, that I want to take a read. I haven't read Booth yet, by Karen Joy Fowler, and everybody loves that book, and I definitely want to read it. So those kinds of books are always out there, but there's a lot of choices. I'm not a particularly speedy reader. It takes me it takes me about a week to get through a book, given the amount of time I give over to my reading, even though I do it, a couple times a day and just relax with whatever book I'm on.
Yeah.
But a lot of books lately I've been tossing aside. I get, into them 100 pages and I think, well, what do I care about this book? And the answer is nothing. It goes, and I have to go on from there. It's there's a lot of choices out there, and I don't feel like I have that much time to waste on books that don't grab me fairly quickly.
I'll ask you a question about tour. You're going to go on tour here in a couple weeks. When you're going on tour, how do you? I mean, you're in a bookstore every night or every other night when you're on tour. Do you typically just bring one hardcover with you in your suitcase? I mean, your suitcase is, you only have so much space. So
right.
Do you bring 1, 2? Do you bring 1 book? Do you bring 3 books? What do you do?
I bring one, almost inevitably, and I will buy another 2 or 3 along the way, or have some of them shipped home or whatever. I'm always shopping. I mean, I'm an inveterate book buyer, and when I'm in the candy shop, I'm going to taste the candy, and I will find things, or people will recommend things, that sort of deal. So you kind of want to leave it yourself some space and time to tackle those things. And I found some amazing books that way that I might not ever have found in any other way. And the other thing I do is I always scan the shelves in the fantasy section, particularly, to see if there's something there that catches my attention. Because sometimes it's the cover, sometimes it's the storyline. They're not all successful, but an awful lot of them are, because you can sort of tell if you're going to see from the writing and from the nature of the book if it's likely to be a story that's going to enrich your life, and if you read it.
Yeah, my favorite thing, bookstore shelf talkers. So the little shelf talkers where booksellers recommend a book. I always go through the entire section and I read those shelf talkers just to see what booksellers are saying. They're so valuable. Booksellers are so valuable to what we do, and I just like to get an insight into what they're thinking.
Yep.
Let's
That's a
see.
good
All right.
source.
I think it might be that was the last question there. So I think it might be time to show the map. What do you guys think?
Okay.
Come on, you guys on Facebook. Come on, hit that heart button. I want hearts, hearts, hearts. Here they come. Here comes the flood. All right, so I'm gonna do a I got to make sure I have nothing on my computer here that breaks an NDA. People can kind of see my next book's cover art, but it's so small I don't think they're going to be able to see it. Ooh, I'll show this off first, though. I do have this here because I do have to do something with it.
Whoa, what's that?
See here, see if I can drop that down. This is Par Ohmsford and Rimmerdal from the Kickstarter.
Oh, right.
Sword of Shannara right there in the vault beneath Tircis.
I'd forgotten about that. So you'd think I'd never forget these things, especially with that series, but it's been so long since I've read that book that I'd forgotten that the Sword of Shannara was at the heart of the story.
Yeah,
and comes in, in the fourth book. They're both struggling to take that.
Yeah, and this, I hadn't looked at this painting by Mark Simonetti in a long time because we've been so done with this book for so long. I'm so happy to finally get the Kickstarter books in. But yeah, I figured, I will show this off right here. This is pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, so here comes the map, everybody. Let me get rid of that. Here we go. All right, there's our map. All right, let's just spend just a couple minutes. I know you got to go, but let's talk a couple minutes about the process of bringing this to life. Did Del Rey approach you about doing a map for the second book, or was that something that you pushed on your end for?
No, I suggested it was a good idea. There's demands for this sort of thing all the time, and I had kind of fallen away from it in the last few books. But when we got past the first one and I saw that it was going to go for multiple books, it seemed to me that it was important to have some kind of a map of where things were located. Because, when I write books, I don't always make it clear where everything is. It doesn't seem particularly important to me to plot out where things are. So I wanted to try to capture a sense of where they were with relation to one another, both in the Fey world, which is on the left, and in the human world, which is on the right. And of course, the Rufflin Wake is where the borderline runs between the two worlds. And you have to travel all the way across if you can manage it, which you can't if you're human, but you can if you're Fey. So that was it. And then I just sat down and thought, well, what things are important? And I filled in the things I thought were important in rough form. And then I think the people at the other end of my editorship added a few things and did a few things. And then the artist interpreted it. And this is his interpretation. Yeah, which I like. I think it's good. It's very striking.
It is. It's very colorful, but not too colorful. When you sent me this originally, I was like, wow, I love this. And I wrote, his name's Jared Blando, for anybody that's wanting to know. He will have prints of this up on his website eventually, but I reached out to Jared really quick because I needed a map for the book that's coming out next year for me.
Yeah,
that's how much I liked this map. I was like, I want this, but in my book. And so he's already kind of started working on it, but it's just gorgeous. This map is just beautiful.
Yeah, he does a good job with it.
Yeah, I'm eager to see. Do you happen to know if it's a fold out or is it end papers or
I think it's a fold out, but I'm not absolutely sure since I don't have a book yet. I have no idea how they ended up doing it. They may have stuck it between the pages at the beginning and end too. They've been known to use it as the book leaf or book flat.
Yeah, right.
So I'm not sure.
All right.
I think they probably told me at one point, but I've long since forgotten. So.
All right. Well, I will be posting. I'll be posting this on the website tomorrow morning, and I'll be posting a little bit longer excerpt on the website as well tomorrow morning. So be on the lookout for that, everyone. Again, I'm going to say, tomorrow, Terry and Naomi are getting together to talk on a Zoom, and which is going to be fun. And that's, I believe it's 5 o'clock Pacific time, 8 o'clock Eastern. So be sure to sign up for that. The information is on Terry's website as well as Naomi's website. I highly recommend you look at both, especially since I just redesigned them. And I think they're pretty snazzy right now, at least for the moment, they're pretty snazzy. You have any last words you want to say to everybody before we cut this off, Terry?
No, I'm looking forward to going on tour again, because I've been kind of lonely for 3 years here without any touring after years and years of going out, a couple of weeks minimum every single year. So I'm looking forward to getting back out and visiting the Northeast and being at New York Comic-Con and coming back to Chicago area, which is close to my hometown, and then coming back to the Pacific Northwest. It's not a huge part of the country, but there are important parts of the country, and it's a good place to wet my feet and see if I can get back into this without, going dry-tongued or something or other in the process.
We'll see. Brian, who's in here, who's asked a couple questions. He said, looking forward to meeting you gents at New York Comic-Con. Yep, us too. We're excited. We're excited for New York Comic-Con, no doubt. All right.
All right.
Well, thank you, Terry. I'll be talking to you tomorrow. Have a good dinner tonight. Tell Judine hi, much love. And thank you for everybody for coming tonight. This has been great. Bye.
Bye-bye.